Hey guys, it's Ray Davis with Bridge to the Future, the show where we explore the human past, the human present, and the human future, looking for ways to create a fairer, freer, and more enlightened human civilization here on planet Earth. Today I want to talk about a couple of things that were in the news this week, and then also talk about the future of 3D printing houses and how that ties into the Star Trek civilization that I talked about in some of my previous videos. Now, it's been a while since I've done a video. I'm going to start trying to make these more often again, hopefully one a week at least. And please like and subscribe below if you like the content. I'm really trying to build this channel, and I hope that you will join me on that journey. So, the first thing I want to talk about today is what's been going on in the stock market this week. And it's been almost impossible, whether you follow the market closely or you just follow it through the mainstream news, to not know what's been going on. There's been this battle, they call it the Battle of David versus Goliath, Wall Street versus a bunch of Reddit traders who are in a battle over several stocks that have been going up here rapidly after they were shorted heavily by some of the bigger players on Wall Street. So I'll let you kind of do your own research on what shorting a stock is, but in a nutshell, it's basically betting against a stock. And major players on Wall Street do this all the time. And a couple of stocks they've done this with here recently are stocks that have been hurt badly by the pandemic and probably also are in industries where the heyday of what they used to do has probably gone away. And two of those were GameStop, GME, the gaming company that, 20 years ago was quite a thing, quite a darling of the stock market, quite a darling of kids everywhere looking for the latest video game, but has fallen on hard times in this era of streaming games and downloading games. And also AMC theaters, which many of you, I'm sure, have attended a movie at some point in your life at an AMC theater. For us here in Kansas City, where the company is actually based, we've attended many, many movies there over the years. And, obviously, due to the pandemic and just the fact that people are able to stream more movies at home on their big screen TVs and things like that, the movie industry has been hurting, and AMC has been hurting because of that. So a number of big players, hedge funds, you can look up that term. You think Michael Milken back in the 80s, if you're old enough to remember that. It's basically companies that make money for their investors by taking risky bets. The stock market, if you just kind of follow the averages of the stock market, you're probably over time going to get about an 8 to 10% return. And a lot of wealthy investors and others don't really want to limit themselves to that. And so they look for investors who invest in things that have a higher risk but higher reward type of thing. And shorting a stock is one of the common things that's done to a stock to try to get more money out of it. Now, ethically, if I can just insert my own opinion here, I think it's pretty unethical because really it's trying to drive a stock price down. I would say that it's manipulation from the get-go because you're not letting the free market work. You're not letting buys and sells of the stock determine what the stock price is. You're putting your thumb on the scale and trying to push that stock down for profit. And not only is it a questionable investment strategy from an ethical standpoint, but it also harms the company. If you think about AMC and GameStop has, I think I saw about 14,000 full-time employees right now. Now, that may have changed a little bit with the pandemic. I'm sure they've had some layoffs probably, but that's how many full-time employees they had as of last year, and about 20 to 40,000 part-time employees. So there's a lot of people that draw their income from working at GameStop. So when you're putting your thumb on the scale by shorting that stock and driving it down, and we're talking big money here coming in to do that, they had shorted this stock over 100%, meaning that there were more shorts on the stock than there were actual shares of stock. So this was going on, and some investors on Reddit got together and realized, hey, there's a number of stocks out here like GameStop and AMC, Nokia. They picked a number of companies that are kind of older companies that the market had kind of forgotten, that have relatively low floats, which means the number of shares outstanding. That means it's easier to move the price of the stock with heavy volume. And they saw where these big hedge funds had short positions in these stocks, trying to basically drive them out of business. So they got together, and of course, you can't say that millions of people got together and did something all for the same reason. Some people are just looking for a profit because there's an opportunity to profit. Some people were doing this for social reasons. They're upset still about the 2008 crash where, a lot of money was sucked out of the hands of ordinary people and went to Wall Street. They're frustrated about the things that have been going on the last year. And they saw an opportunity using the rules of the market, by the way. They're not breaking any rules or any laws in doing this, and decided, hey, let's put some money in GameStop and AMC and Nokia and Bed Bath & Beyond, a number of other stocks that were in this situation where the Wall Street big boys were in there betting against their future and driving their price down. There was an opportunity to force those shorts to sell their shares by driving the price up. Now, what happens with a short contract is they expire, and you have to do something with them by the expiration date. Now, normally, you would hope that the share went down a little bit, and you're able to resell the share back to its real owner and make a little profit off of that. That's how a short typically works. However, in this case, the shares of these companies had gone up so much that the companies couldn't afford to buy the stocks back at those prices. And also, because of how many people were buying the stocks, there weren't shares available for them to buy the stock even. So they were kind of caught in this situation. And earlier in the week, one of these hedge funds got caught so short that they were in a squeeze where they really couldn't pay their debts back. And they had to get bailed out by another hedge fund to get that help. And there started being calls for Washington to help bail out the hedge funds because of the situation that they had put themselves in by doing these shorts on these companies. Now, what these traders were doing, if you paid attention to that econ class you were forced to take back in college during the day when they were talking about stocks, is drive up the buying volume, which is a simple supply and demand thing. When a stock has more demand, the price is going to go up. That's what happens in a normal situation. And in a situation like this where you have these shorts, it goes up more because those shorts are having to go out and buy shares to cover their short positions. And so it creates this buying frenzy, and that's what we've seen in GameStop, where it went from, at the beginning of the year, it was about $18 and went up to over $450 at one point this week. But, even before that, it was trading at $3 a share just a few months ago. So this thing has gone up incredibly. So for the people who got in early on this and rode this all the way to the top and got out, they made a lot of money. There have been some millionaires definitely made out of this situation. But the traders were not doing anything illegal. They basically saw an investment opportunity, the same way the hedge fund saw an investment opportunity, and they took it. And they caught these hedge funds short. Well, by about the middle of the week, the cry on this from Wall Street was pretty heavy. You started seeing people going in the media talking about these evil Reddit traders and comparing them to rioters at the Capitol and, suggesting that maybe there was foreign influence trying to influence our markets, really putting out all these nonsense claims trying to undermine what was going on here and turn people against the Reddit traders. Unfortunately, that didn't work very well. Everybody from Elon Musk to AOC to Ted Cruz to Elizabeth Warren to Donald Trump Jr., that's quite a wide swath of the American political spectrum, all came out on the side of the traders, saying that this was, ridiculous, that anything should be done to try to stop what they were doing. On Thursday, this got even worse because Robinhood and TD Ameritrade and a number of the other brokerage platforms stopped allowing people on Thursday morning to buy shares. However, they were still allowing people to sell shares. Now, again, if you were awake for the second 5 minutes of that stock class in your Econ 101 class back in college, you'll know that when it's all selling on a stock, the price goes down, 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 down. And all morning on Thursday, I can attest to this, again, because I have the AMC stock, this share tanked as they were allowing shares to be sold, but no shares to be bought. That is manipulation, and that's what's going to trigger some Senate and congressional hearings about this. That's what's causing regulators to look into whether there's anything fishy about this. But basically, they were prohibiting the free flow of the market, preventing people who wanted to buy the stock from buying the stock and allowing those who were trying to get out of the stock, i.e. the short sellers, to get out of the stock without costing them all the money that it would have cost them had the market been allowed to take its course. So there was a huge outcry about this Thursday night. There was a lot of talk about it on mainstream media and on financial media. Come Friday morning, all the platforms came back out and said, we're going to let you trade in those stocks, but you can only buy a limited number of shares. So basically, they took the heat. They knew that what they had done on Thursday was going to cause a lot of blowback, and it did, and it probably likely still will for them. There's been a class action suit I know filed against Robinhood, the trading platform, and perhaps other platforms as well. I'm not sure. But come Friday, they had to do something, so they allowed people to buy shares. Now, at one point during the day, you could only buy one share of GameStop and one share of AMC. At other times during the day, you were not allowed to open any new positions at all in either of those companies or about 13 other stocks that they were targeting for this. Now, they were saying that this is all the way the market works, that they have to work through clearinghouses that settle the trades, and this is all true. If you don't know much about the stock market, it operates in about 1950s technology. It takes 2 days to clear a trade, which is absolutely ridiculous. You know, in this modern age, we could clear trades just like that, no problem. But we don't do that. It takes 2 days to clear a trade. And they were worried that with all this volatility, it was going to catch people short because a trade that was made 2 days ago, now when the price is actually settled, the stock is actually settled, there's a huge difference in price. And they weren't able to cover that. Now, that may be a legitimate excuse. That may be a legitimate reason why this partly happened. But, you know, if you're going to limit shares on a stock, then you should limit the buying and the selling. Freeze it completely. That's fair for everyone. Even if that was the case, this was manipulation. And that's my opinion. And I'm going to stick to it because I watched it happen myself on Thursday morning. You can't limit buying and not limit selling. That's manipulation. If you freeze the stock completely, then everybody is in the same position and you let it cool down a little while and you start it up again. That's fair. But when you just close off one side of the spectrum and basically allow these companies to escape with their money that they bet on these companies going down, that's not fair. And it costs the investors who are trying to get into the stocks a lot of money. There's no doubt in my mind, AMC closed yesterday, I think 13.62, something like that. Had this not gone on, had the actual flow of the market been allowed to progress, we probably would have seen something similar with AMC that we saw with GME and that we're still seeing with GME. GME is kind of caught in a loop here. And they really can't get out of this. If you notice, it keeps going up and down and up and down, and there's still money being made both ways. Now, I should say that another thing that some of the adults, quote unquote, from Wall Street were using as a reason why they were doing this is they were doing it for our own protection. We're not as sophisticated as they are, and we don't understand how the market works, and we might be taking risks that we don't understand. And that's just nonsense. I'm sorry. People are adults. People have Google. People understand how these things work. Yes, there's a lot of new investors in the market that have never been in there before, but you know the market is risk. I've been trading myself for about 13 years, and the way I've learned is I've lost. Sometimes I've lost money. Sometimes I've made nice money. But you know, it works both ways. That's how the market works. These big players that shorted these stocks knew that. Most of the people getting into these stocks know that at some point, you know, GameStop is not really worth $450 and it's going to come back down. I mean, that's inevitable. But that's the market. That's the free market that we say we believe in and the free market that we say we want to have going in our country and in our world. And quite frankly, you know, this is an industry that constantly, you know, bucks against any type of regulation. They want the free market to work. Just leave us alone. Let it happen. Well, in this case, they didn't want to let it happen. They wanted someone to step in and stop these traders from making the money they should have made from the trades they were making. And that's what happened this week. It's not fair. It's not right. There are going to be repercussions for it, no doubt about it. Some of the platforms, Robinhood being one, you can tell by the name. The whole idea of Robinhood was, right, to steal from the rich and give to the poor. That's kind of how this platform had positioned itself on the market, was as kind of on the side of the average investor. And they really kind of showed their true colors this week. Maybe they were caught between a rock and a hard place, but it was not okay to limit just the buying and not the selling. That was totally manipulation, and it should never happen in a stock. And we're going to see this go on for a few more weeks, probably at least with these 13 stocks. The two that have been getting most of the attention, again, are GameStop and AMC. But there are other stocks that this has also been going on with, and you'll see a bit more of this probably. I saw one of the big hedge funds, Citron, announce this week that they're going to start pulling out of short positions and start looking for high growth companies that they can help investors get into early on. So I think that's a good outcome of this. Short selling is really kind of a nefarious practice. It destroys companies, it destroys jobs, it manipulates the market, and it's been allowed to go on for decades. For probably as long as we've had a stock market, that's been allowed to go on. And it's not okay. And the reason it got exposed this week is because some smart people used the internet to band together and counter them, and they didn't like it. And that's what we're seeing all this shakeup on. So I just want to finish this part of our talk today by saying this. If you see someone on the news telling you that these Reddit traders are creating chaos and volatility and we can't have this, there should be no doubt in your mind that these are people who are defending the status quo as it is. They're defending the right of these hedge funds to do whatever they want to do to these companies and block people from trying to do anything to counter them, even if that's just how the market works. So this is something that we'll be talking about probably more in the future because we are far from done with this, but it was really a big deal this week. I want to close today talking about 3D printed houses. And one of the big things that has to happen for us to create the Star Trek civilization that I've talked about in some of my previous videos is we have to get to the point where we're meeting the basic needs of every human being in this country and on this planet. That's where we should try to be striving for as we enter deeper into the 21st century here. Not that everybody starts from nothing in life and has to scramble their whole lives just to get to something, but that everybody has a baseline. I would use as a template for that Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, he talked about 5 basic needs that we all have, and housing is one of those. Clothing, food, love, and I would throw healthcare in there as well. I think in a modern society, everyone should have access to affordable healthcare. So basically, we would meet the basic needs of every person. That's what happens in Star Trek. Every person in that civilization has their basic needs met by technology, mostly. Or it's become so cheap to produce those basic needs that it's not really about money anymore. Then everyone is allowed to build the life they want with the freedoms that they have on top of that baseline. So we're not building from a baseline of nothing. We're building from a baseline of having people's reasonable needs met. Now, as I talked about in some previous videos, we have people that will immediately say, well, what? You're just going to let people sit on their couch and play video games their whole life? Yeah, if that's all they want to do with their life, I guess they can do that. And they'll have the bare minimum, which is those basic needs met. For those of us who want a little more out of life, we can build on that platform. And instead of having to waste our money trying to get our basic needs met, we can actually aspire to being the person we want to be. Instead of doing a job for 40 years that we have to do basically to pay bills, we could do a job or do something that contributes to society that is really more closer to our heart, something that we really want to do instead of something that we have to do. And so there are a lot of benefits to doing this, but one of those hierarchy of needs that we talked about is housing. And there's a company called Icon, and they're not the only one. There are a number of companies around the world who are doing this right now, who are really amping up the capability to build 3D houses with 3D printers, who are really amping up the capability to build houses quickly using 3D printers. Now, this is a pretty amazing process. When you go look it up online, you can find some videos of them doing this. And there is still human labor that has to happen to do wiring and things like that in the house, obviously. But they're able to build a house for about $4,000 in about 24 hours. Now, that's pretty amazing. Now, these aren't huge houses. I think some of the ones I've seen online, and they've built several of these communities, Icon has, around Central America. I believe there's one in Mexico and perhaps one in Texas. And they're little small houses, not many houses like you see on those YouTube videos, but they're maybe, 600, 800 square feet, but they're built in like 24 hours for $4,000. Now, I did a little math on that. Our latest fighter jets that we build are estimated to cost about $87 million a piece. You could build 20,000 $4,000 houses for the cost of one fighter jet. Now, that's pretty amazing, but here's something else. One aircraft carrier. Now, you should know about the U.S. We have more aircraft carriers, I believe, than all the other navies in the world combined. We probably don't really need another aircraft carrier, but I believe if you go check, we're building 3 of them right now at a cost of about $12.9 billion each. So if you take one aircraft carrier At $12.9 billion, you could build 3.2 million houses for $4,000 apiece. Now, I don't know what the homelessness is in the United States right now. The pandemic has obviously driven those numbers up, sadly. But before the pandemic, homelessness in the United States was estimated to be at about 500,000 people. We could build 6 times that many houses for the cost of one aircraft carrier. We could do it for $4,000 a pop. We could do it, these are nice looking houses. I mean, you'd be shocked. You would not know by looking at them that they were built this way. And they can be built very quickly. I mean, literally a day for each one. Now, these printing machines that these construction companies are using are very expensive. They're very big. So, and there aren't a lot of them in the market yet, but we could certainly upscale that. And it's something that we could do very cheaply. I mean, $12.9 billion is nothing in the US federal budget every year. We could end homelessness for a fraction of that, really, if you talk about 500,000 people. For a fraction of the cost of one aircraft carrier, we could end homelessness. Now, I'm sure there would be a lot of arguments about, well, some people don't want a home, some people don't deserve a home, some people would mess it up somehow anyway. We can deal with all those sociological things on the back end. The bottom line is there's no reason for anyone in 21st century America or Europe or Japan or China or a lot of other places in this world not to have housing as a basic need that needs to be met as a human being. And we're developing this technology that's going to allow us to do that very easily, very cheaply, very quickly. And so this is something we need to keep an eye on and something we need to be thinking about. And providing basic housing for everyone would be something that would be a start in that direction of what I'm talking about. We're not going to jump one day from where we are now to this Star Trek civilization. There are going to be many steps along the way, and we're going to have to look at ways to begin moving in that direction. Now, I'm not suggesting some communist state, for those of you who are wondering, where everybody's going to live in a 600 square foot 3D printed house. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting that we give up our lifestyles. I'm suggesting that if we start with the people in need, we can begin building this foundation of a basic human level of need being met in our society that no one drops below. And I think that's something that is not only a noble endeavor, but eventually starts moving us towards this world. And as we talked about in a couple of the previous videos, this whole idea about human labor and capital that is the basis of the 3 main economic systems on the planet right now, capitalism, socialism, communism, is something that our technology in the coming decades is going to profoundly change, if not replace. And we need to be thinking about what that looks like for average human beings on this planet. And beginning these steps now of making sure that everybody has these basic needs met is something that we can do to help reach that goal. So in future episodes, I'll be talking about some of the other technologies that are coming online that are going to help get us to this Star Trek civilization where we can provide these basic needs for everyone at a low cost and do it in a way that provides everyone a foundation on which to build their lives. So there you go. We had a little free market capitalism. We had a little Star Trek civilization today. The world is in flux. A lot of things are changing. And, more and more, I'm seeing institutions reaching for these authoritarian means. Now, I've come out about the pandemic and said that I, agree with some of the steps that have been taken over the past year to try to mitigate the pandemic. But I also have said that there's no getting around the fact that there have been economic impacts and sociological impacts, psychological impacts that we just cannot ignore. And these are all challenges that we have to face as we try to shut down this pandemic and move on. But the world needs to be a freer place, a more enlightened place, a place where everyone has a chance and everyone can get ahead and everyone does get ahead. We don't need to have this fight over scarce resources anymore. And in many ways, I hope what's happened this week with the stock market has helped everyone to see that ultimately the stock market is a psychological game. All these pundits get on these CNBC shows and Bloomberg and act like the market is a rational thing. It's not. It's an emotional, psychological thing all the time. Every reaction in a market is always an overreaction. In fact, I'm not giving trading advice here, but I'm just telling you, When you see something happen in an industry and there's a reaction against the stocks in that industry, you can almost bet that it's an overreaction. I had a situation earlier this year where Amazon announced that they were going to get into the pharmacy business. And the stock GoodRx, that some of you probably have seen commercials for on TV, tanked $18 in one day because of that announcement. Now, Amazon hadn't really done anything yet. They just announced that they were going to do it, and the stock dropped $18. Now, if I went back and looked at the 5-year history of the stock, it had been trading between $50 and $55 pretty consistently for most of the last 5 years. There was nothing that had changed in one day that made that a $37 stock. So I bought some shares and wrote it back up to where it was reasonable and eventually sold at about a $10 profit per share. That's the kind of thing you can look for in the market legitimately, because the market always overreacts because it's an emotional thing. It's not a rational thing. So when they try to shut down these traders and they try to tell them that you can't make the profit that your trades would allow, it's just not right. We need to have an even playing field. And the authoritarian moves that were made this week in the stock market, leaning on the side of the big guys once again, are just not something we can allow to go on. We need to democratize the market if we want it to survive. And eventually, as I said, the economy may go away as we understand it. But for now, it needs to be more fair, it needs to be more free, and it needs to be more enlightened. And that's the way we need this planet to be, and we need our civilization to be. This is Ray Davis with Bridge to the Future. I hope you'll like, subscribe, and share. Everybody have a great day, and I will talk to you again soon.